Humans! Greetings, humans, and welcome to the Dana Murray Podcast. This is where we endeavor to find common ground with all people, with discussions on culture, social evolution, music and art, and the human condition. This week's guest needs no introduction. With a career that spans over 40 years, he's played with artists as diverse as Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis, Sting, James Taylor, The Grateful Dead, all while finding time to win Grammys and music direct The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. A somewhat polarizing figure to generations that followed him. Because the motherfucker's opinionated. A somewhat polarizing figure to generations that followed him. Because he just keeps it real and could give two shits about your feelings. Hey, I love it. We've been friends over 20 years, and it was an absolute pleasure to sit down with the one, the only, Branford Marsalis. Enjoy.
I was sitting on a plane about 20 years ago with an Englishman, and I was making fun of England, and he was making fun of the U.S.
Okay.
And he says, but seriously, one of the biggest problems with the U.S. is that you guys have this untenable narrative. It's like, untenable. You guys have this untenable narrative. He says, you can't find another country in the world that lionizes individuals the way that y'all do.
Right.
Y'all have this whole homespun thing about the man who has nothing who made something. He says, y'all have rich people on the front of newspapers because they're rich. We have plenty of rich people in England who are never in the newspaper because they don't do anything.
Right, right.
And when he was saying it, I was listening going, and when you extrapolate outward to that, you know, we value people because they make a lot of money. It's really like the principal weakness of our nation.
You're right.
With all the great things that we have, it is this obsession with being either rich or famous. And it's this praise of the individual. And when you think about jazz or any great music in a musical context, there are great individuals, but all the individuals understand that they work in the context of a larger group.
Right, right.
You know.
Right.
But in our country, what we have are a lot of individual musicians who use jazz as a mechanism to promote their own individual greatness.
That is so true.
Which is why the conversation is always about a particular person's contributions or innovations. It is never about a group context.
You know what? I'm just going to get into this shit. For one, welcome to Dana Murray Podcast. We have the incomparable, my man, Mr. Branford Marsalis. I usually have my damn intern here, but
I'm glad you don't have the intern. I don't need to hear
has a damn gig tonight.
Good.
But you know what? I'm glad you hit on that because I want to start with that. Because one of my questions I was going to have, because I know I'm going to get a straight-ass answer from you. Not so much, okay, I got to New York 94.
Yeah.
And
the beginning of the end.
Right, yeah. But with that, I was one of the few individuals, me and the group of cats that all came to town at that time, which included, you know, we're talking about Eric Revis, Russell Gunn,
right.
J.D. Allen,
right.
You know, James Hurt. You know, all of us cats came there at the same time for some reason. And that was about the only time anyone black could hear something from someone white about how they felt discriminated against by being a white jazz musician. Like, white cats couldn't buy a gig in 94.
I don't
in the city. I'm talking about the city.
I don't know if that's really true. I mean, maybe certain gigs.
Well,
but that's not.
There was definitely
That's not been my experience. You know, maybe because I mean, what they, you know, it's like the whole thing is complicated to me.
It is. I mean, it's
a complicated.
woven
It's not a cut and dry kind of thing, because I remember I was living in New York at that time, or I left and I came back. But like all you guys were playing in what they called the uptown scene. So y'all were all like, the black folks were uptown, and then there was the downtown scene with that club that I can't remember the name of, that all these guys were playing. It wasn't exclusively white
Smalls.
guys. No. This
Midtown?
No, downtown. You know, they had a couple of clubs. The Knitting Factory? The Knitting Factory.
Knitting Factory was
there you
down
go.
there, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
the
not there
Knitting
anymore.
Factory.
Yeah.
I know, but I'm saying there was this
Yeah.
whole thing, and it was like Jordan Zorn was down there, and I mean, I'm forgetting all the names because the names aren't really, but there were a lot of guys down there doing experimental music, and the majority of those guys were white. And then y'all had the uptown scene where they were doing experimental music, and the majority of their guys were black.
Okay. In that sense, yes, I agree. I'm talking about swinging. Is like,
but there were not a lot of people who wanted to play swing by then.
Well,
they don't. It's like an interesting thing. It goes back to you know, the individuality thing. It's kind of like when you watch. When you watch like what President Trump does, where he gravitates toward narratives that either make him feel better or he feels vindicates his position. So they'll ask him a question about Russia, and now he's talking about how it wasn't really the Russians, it was the Ukrainians. And all of the evidence points to the fact that it was the Russians, but he doesn't like the way that sounds or feels. So he is comforted by this narrative that it was actually the Ukrainians, it was actually the DNC who hacked the DNC with the help of the Ukrainians. And, you know, is you know, more liberal-minded people, we tend to try to make fun of Donald Trump, and I'm always amused because I say, well, I see a lot of my friends, y'all have these exact same proclivities. For instance.
Now wait a minute. You
For instance.
Okay.
Say you have a guy who comes to New York, says he wants to play jazz.
Right.
And like he doesn't swing very well.
Okay.
Now you have two choices. You can do that poorly until you do it better, or you can minimize the importance of it in the first place, which then gives you clearance to do the thing that makes you feel better.
Definitely.
There's a woman named Carol Dweck who wrote a book called Mindset.
Okay.
And in Mindset, she was talking about children as young as 4. And she had her categories. And I don't remember, the one I preferred was the growth mindset.
Right.
Oh, the growth mindset and the set mindset.
Explain.
In the set mindset, and she explained it. People who are in the fixed mindset.
Right.
People who are in the fixed mindset believe that nature or the creator only endows a handful of people with intelligence.
Okay.
And of course, they happen to be among that group that has it. So when there are situations or data that starts to prove counter to their own personal narrative, they diminish the importance of the data. That way, it allows them to perpetuate this idea that they have set for themselves. Now, the growth mindset, when challenged by things that are above their capacity to understand, the growth mindset gets excited about the possibility of learning new things.
I think that whole narrative has been magnified by social media. That's why, like, a lot of music sounds the same, and it's not. You know, a lot of people just say.
I think to be fair, Dan, all that music sounded the same in the '90s when y'all got there.
Are you talking jazz or just music?
Oh well. The reason that music sounds the same has nothing to do with social media. It has to do with machines.
Well,
like
I think
if you
people
listen to
have
music,
a natural.
if you listen to music from the '70s, they were actual songs. They were songs. They had an A section, a B section, a bridge. We are now 20 years into the 4-bar loop.
I think this.
You know, and the 4-bar loop permeates everything. Everybody that's singing in all forms of pop music, it's 4-bar loops.
True.
So the art of songwriting, while it is still around, there are songwriters.
There are some.
But they don't get the kind of attention. No, there are lots of people who are singer-songwriters.
Right.
But they don't get the kind of attention that songwriting used to get. Now it's driven by what is a hit, what is successful.
Yeah, that's what I mean by social media, though. And whereas before there could be a fad and someone could jump on, now a fad gets blown up and thrown out to the masses. And if you're a kid coming up, you're like, well, shit, what do I want to do? Well, this is hot.
It still gets cannibalized. No, but the thing is it still get. I mean, there was that problem. I mean, think about all those bands like the Barcades. The Barcades were a terrible band, but they had hit records.
They had some killing songs, though.
They really didn't.
Hey, the Isley Brothers weren't a very good live band.
But they had some killing songs.
Okay, that's kind of what I'm saying.
They were a terrible live band. But the two people with talent in that band were still great on stage.
Yeah.
The reason that the Isley Brothers were a bad band was because Ronald wanted to have his brothers on stage who were really good pimps with the fur coats and the canes. But
everybody was a pimp back then.
But they had no musical ability at all.
Right.
No, they really weren't. If you think about Earth, Wind, and Fire, they were wearing the bell bottoms and the sequins and the rhinestones and the whole thing.
Though. It was dope.
No. Big ass fur coats with pimp hats and canes looked like pimps from that time. When you look at LTD and all those bands, they didn't look like Brick. They didn't look like pimps. Isley Brothers, pimps.
Right.
Straight up pimps. And couldn't sing, couldn't play no music. So you had Chris Jasper, the piano player, played great.
Uh-huh.
And then you had Ernie Isley, who played every damn thing.
Right.
He played guitar, he played drums, he played bass. He was basically the band, him and Chris Jasper.
Right.
And then you had Ronald, who could sing his behind off. Mm-hmm. And then Kelly and them, whatever, they were just standing on stage going, whoo. It was the worst experience ever. You know, because this is before they had like samplers where you could just like lip sync to the live. You had to actually try to sing.
Who were the actual like bands that were actually killing of that who you wouldn't think
in R&B?
In the 70s.
In R&B though.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's War was great.
Okay.
Earth, Wind, and Fire was great. LTD was great.
How about Kool and the Gang?
Cool. What? The original
Kool and the Gang.
The original Kool and the Gang was great.
Right.
The other Kool and the Gang was great too, but it became more of a pop band.
Yeah.
But like the Hollywood Swinging Band, the Doogie Band, and all that stuff. Yeah, that band. Yeah, they were tight.
Right.
BT Express was good live. Parliament was great live, and Funkadelic. Parliament and Funkadelic were great live. There were some other bands that are less known, like what's the name of that band? Is it like Mother Funk? Mother, they were something. Rufus was great live. Right. Mother's Finest, that was the name of the band. Mother's Finest.
Okay. Yes.
Mother's Finest was really great live. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of and we heard a lot of music. Me and my boys, we would go to all these concerts, and a lot of times all of those bands would be on the same show.
Tell me a little bit about growing up in New Orleans. Obviously, you come from a very prominent family. I've seen a lot of interviews where people ask you, so what was it like to grow up as a Marsalis? I'm not going to get into any of that shit.
Man,
people know who you are.
We didn't really grow up like that because like Winton and I are a little over a year apart.
Right.
So we were together all the time.
But there's something in the water, though, with the Marsalis.
No. There's something in the water with that town. Because there are at least 10 families that I can name right now that you have never heard of where the musicians are fifth-generation musicians.
Okay.
In our family,
fair.
We're second.
That's fair.
I'm talking about like the Paulins.
Right.
The Barberins. Mm-hmm. The Barberins, I mean, Paul Barberin had a band in the 50s. He wrote Bourbon Street Parade.
Right. Right.
And like Lucien Barberin plays with Harry Connick now, and like the Barberins were there, the Frenches were there with Papa French and then George French.
Right.
And then there's all these New Orleans families. It is a different thing when you grow up in a town where you have kids your age that play music. Like music is thought of, or was, can't speak for now, it was thought of as one of the coolest things to be. Even the gangsters are like, yeah, I know you, man. You play that music, right? Yeah, man, keep that up.
Right.
And, we got you, man. You need me. It was like a thing where some of the gang, like one dude I knew, he was one of the biggest coke dealers in New Orleans. He played tenor saxophone. So when I would see him, he would be like, Marsalis, come over here. He started asking me, he talked shop. He talked saxophone shop.
Right. And then he go back to doing his shit.
Man, everybody knew what he was doing.
Right.
But I mean, like, where are you gonna find that? Name the movie where the coke dealer is like talking to musicians about playing music. It's like when you grow up in a place like that.
Right. Now, you know
it's
what?
phenomenal to be around a bunch of, New Orleans is one of the only places where a tuba player can make a living and not have to be in an orchestra to do it.
That's interesting. Right.
It's like so
one
many
of the only
things.
places.
One of the few left.
That is interesting. Never thought of it like that. I don't think enough of our generation, just because we're not that far behind you and Skane, but in general, we owe you cats a big thank you. Let me hold on though. Let me tell you why. Because as outspoken as both of you motherfuckers are, is like you guys do have a very humble side. And what I know we owe you guys is, I remember getting so much confidence by reading the brazen quotes from you cats coming up. That made me say, damn, if these cats are coming. I remember when you were playing with Sting and you came out and you said, you know what? We will kick the shit out of any other rock band. I was like, oh shit. It's like,
it was hyperbolic.
Yeah, but many people may think that.
It was
not
hyperbolic.
A lot of young black musicians. You were what? 20,
I was 25.
Yeah, not a lot are gonna just say that.
But I mean, I grew up in New Orleans. It's a shit talking place.
Right.
Man. We talk trash. It's mostly just trash talking. Because it's like it's a ridiculous statement on the face of it when you think about it, because we don't play football. Like, there cannot be a victor. There is no victor. There's like people who like this band and people who like that band.
But you would have straight battled with any other band. Like, that was your
but what
mentality.
I'm saying is, like, there's just two things.
Right.
Like, all right, I don't want to just name it's another band that's successful.
Right.
And their fans love them.
Right.
Their fans don't know nothing about music.
Right.
So when we're playing with these other bands, the musicians might know we're dealing, but the fans are just fans. They don't.
Right.
This is where the entire modern logic of jazz falls on his face, because the logic is based on the premise that there exists in the world a group of people who are interested in studying harmony to know why you're good.
Right.
And they just don't exist.
Yeah, okay, listen. I get all
So
that.
I was being hyperbolic.
Yeah, okay,
because it was fun.
Oh, okay, cool. There's no. Are you really unaware if there was a jazz timeline, right?
Right.
You got to be aware that you cats are right in there, because to be honest, I don't know if that movement that I'm talking about that went to New York, without you guys, I don't know that even happened. The whole Young Lion thing, I don't think that happens without that.
Whole thing was,
and that's real.
That whole thing was like Winton really wanted that. He left. He was a National Merit Scholar. He got Juilliard on the full scholarship. He went there to New York. He was going to play jazz. I was playing R&B, man. I was like, yeah, whatever, man. Mm-hmm. And he and my dad kind of talked me into the idea of going to play jazz.
Right.
But the one thing that was clear when we got there, if you were going to listen to any of the old people, it's like, I appreciate y'all spirit and I appreciate y'all vibe, but y'all don't know what the hell you're doing.
Right.
Now, that's a crucial moment. Because right at that moment, you can say, well, they're just haters. They're jealous because we getting attention. Or you can take them to heart and say, the recordings that I've heard bears witness to what they know, and maybe I should heed their advice.
Right.
And those were great. The mid to late 80s were really seminal for me, because with the help of Blakey and Dizzy Gillespie and Benny Golson and Leroy Vinegar and Red Holloway and I'm gonna forget names, of course, because I put it on the spot. But all these guys had little Buddy Tate, little things, little things. Like Dizzy Gillespie would say, "Man, I just don't hear the blues in your playing."
Diz would say that,
and I said, "Man, I can play a blues." He goes, "No, man, not the changes, the sound.
Right.
I don't hear the sound of the blues in your playing."
Right.
No, I could make up a bunch of. I could be in a fixed mindset
Yeah.
and make up a bunch of excuses. But I went, wow, I hadn't even thought of that. Mm-hmm. And I have an R&B background, so then, like the modern equivalent now, when you say that to guys, they start playing R&B licks. Mm-hmm. You can hear it on records. It's right there.
Right.
So I was like, man. So what am I gonna do? So I started listening to just Mississippi Delta blues. Mm-hmm. I just bought all these records. I bought these records and it helped out. Eventually, that was the same thing I had to rely on when we were doing A Love Supreme, because we did one version that was terrible. Mm-hmm. And when you reassess, when you listen to it, and you say, well, okay, it sucks. Great. Why? Right. It really was funny that thing Dizzy was talking about.
Right.
Because when you listen to Train playing this stuff, the sound of the blues is prevalent in all the movements. It is everywhere.
You can hear the lineage of like a Sun House.
You can hear it, the sound of it.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Not just Sun House, but like, all those guys, whether it's Blind Lemon Jefferson or John Lee Hooker or Sonny Boy Williamson or Willie Dixon.
You could feel the spirit within that.
I don't know about the feeling of the spirit. I'm talking about the actual sound of it.
Right.
The sound of it. You know what I mean?
So you think Diz was... Yeah.
That's the sound.
You're talking sonically, not necessarily...
Yeah, I'm not talking harmonically.
I
have no interest in having a harmonic discussion. There's plenty of people who do that all day long.
Right.
To the point of absolute
utter
boredom.
The sound of it.
The sound of it. The sound of the blues. So a year later, Dizzy heard me and says, hey, man, I'm all right. It's getting there. It was never, man, you killing. Now, other people, no.
Oh, they ain't going to do that.
No, I think if it really was killing, this guy played with Charlie Parker. I think if it was killing, he would say it's killing.
Right.
But he was right. It was not killing.
Right.
And all the recorded evidence I have juxtaposed to what I was playing proved that they were right. It was not killing.
Right.
So the one thing I didn't start doing is like whining like a little punk and saying, "Oh, how could you say such a thing about me?" And fans, get my back. Tell me I'm killing so I can feel good.
Well, that's the narrative with and I'm not going to get into bashing this young generation, but they seem to always want.
Well, there were guys that were like that even in our generation, to be fair. They were running out talking about they were going to invent their own sound and invent this. Right. So, I mean, I vividly remember guys when I started learning Lester Young, he said, man, why you learning that shit?
Right.
You should be out there doing your own thing. And I said, well, I'm learning how to do my own thing.
Right.
Because I had this thing with a writer in Downbeat where he was saying, the music, like, your music just doesn't sound forward thinking. I said, well, man, I don't know what I'm doing yet.
What year was this?
I don't know, 80, whatever. And I said, I don't know what I'm doing.
You said, I don't know what I'm doing yet?
Of course. It was true. So I don't know what I'm doing yet. And I'm listening to all these guys so I can get these sounds so I can develop a vocabulary.
Right.
And he was like, well, there are other guys. I said, no, but those are harmonic vocabularies. I don't want to stand in that long line. I want to develop a sonic vocabulary.
Right.
Because the thing that moves people, this is what you learn playing R&B, even though you don't articulate it. When the band is funky and is grooving, people get up and dance.
Right.
When it's not funky, the people don't dance. And if the people don't dance, the people don't drink. And if the people don't drink, you don't have a job. Now, there is no mathematical formula to equate groove.
Right.
It is just groove.
Right.
And it's either grooving or it's not grooving. And if you have an R&B band, and I've been in both sides of that, if you have an R&B band that is grooving, all the other technical points are permissible.
Right.
You can miss notes.
Right.
You can have a lack of execution.
Right.
If it's funky, everybody's dancing.
Right.
You can have a band where every note is precise and every note is crisp and it's not grooving, you're not gonna work. So my thing is that, I was really more interested in creating a sound that would have an emotional effect on a listener than trying to win a reader's poll.
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
Getting musicians. Like, I thought that was just a losing argument. And I was kind of telling that to this guy at the time. And then Benny Golson calls me and leaves a message on, remember, because you used to have tape machines with your answering machines. He says, hey, man, I read that interview. He says, I just need to tell you, you're right. You're right.
That's what he said?
Yeah. So you're right. He said, I used to sound just like Coleman Hawkins, and then you learn how to play like Hawk, and a couple things like yours slide in there. It's like, because you would leave these long
yeah,
messages back then. You don't have like a computer cutting you off.
Right.
And then a couple of you slide in there. So what all I got to tell you is that don't listen to these people telling you need to go find your sound. You just keep doing your homework, and very gradually your sound will find you. Okay? And he hung up.
Just leave it at that. You cats had the effect, and again, I can speak for my generation, which was pretty much right after y'all. I liken it to what it might have been like when punk music came along. Man, when Black Codes hit, man, listen, it was like, what the fuck is this? And for our generation, we can all cite that because we still talk about it to this day. I talk to Rebus every single day, and everybody remembers when they heard Black Codes. And I don't care what the individual development was about as far as swinging in and everything that we've been talking about as far as the music, but the spirit of that music was like, we're coming.
Yeah, well, it wasn't very good musically, and Winton and I are not in dispute about this. Mm-hmm. But Winton had and continues to have a passion for jazz because he wrote the majority of those songs. Right. And I mean, Kenny Kirkland and Jeff Tane Watts, and we were just down. We were down with it.
Right.
We were down with it.
Well, that's the way it made people feel.
I didn't practice as much as I should have, to my point about the R&B guys, Tane didn't practice as much as he should have. We were out hanging out, and Winton was practicing and mad at us because we didn't practice like him. There was this whole thing. But when it was time to play the music, it's like we were actually trying to play the music. We weren't because there's a body language to a lot of musicians, where every song is a vehicle for them to solo on. Mm-hmm. So the only time that you feel that they are physically engaged in the moment is when they are soloing.
Right.
And when they are not soloing, they're looking at the wall or looking at their nails or looking at. Mm-hmm. We were together in this vibe, trying to make this thing happen. And
how old were you guys when you guys were making it?
I think 25.
Man, that's crazy.
So I was 25. So I guess Kenny. He may have been 10 years older than me, maybe less. So Tane was 26, Winton was 24.
Right.
Charnette was like 18 or 19.
The only reason I went to Berkeley, man, because all y'all cats went. It's like when I was coming up, it was like, and that's what I try to instill in my students now. It's like, I can't teach you shit, man. I can just give you tools to go and teach yourself. As soon as I saw how someone else did it, now whether that was the only way, I didn't care. It's like, well, listen, I know that path worked for someone, and they're human, so nothing was ever unattainable to me, Right. That's the only reason I went to Berkeley. It's like, well, shit, Tame B and shit, Vinnie Colaiuta, all these cats that I love, they all went there. There's something there. I'm gonna go there.
Right.
And I remember when you came and spoke to, you probably remember this shit. You came and spoke to our Black Student Union in 1992.
I did? No, I don't remember.
Yeah. And I remember you saying listen, no one can teach you how to do shit. And you said it just like that. And it's like, if you don't use the tools and go practice, no one's gonna practice for you. It's you that's gonna be teaching you. And that was a monumental moment because it just solidified where I hoped my head was, but then to hear you say, yeah, it's all about putting in the time, studying, listening, and being dedicated to it. And sometimes school gets in the way of that.
Well, if you let it, it does.
Yeah.
Because, schools, whether it's almost like, imagine if you had a school for football.
Right.
Like, imagine if you had one. So
it sounds like a bullshit school.
No. Imagine if you had a school for football. And like there's a kid playing for the New York Giants, Daniel Jones. He went to Duke.
Right.
And all the New York fans, there are a lot of people who like football, but they like football the way they like music.
Yeah.
So,
boy, he got hate when he came in the league.
So they drafted him, and all the fans start booing. Mm-hmm. Now, they don't know this cat.
Right.
So why are they booing him? They're booing him because he didn't play for a major football team in a major conference. So they will not have known of him. So if it was a school for football.
You don't think they were booing because they thought they should have took old boy, though?
Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah.
But they don't have the ability to ascertain whether Dwayne Haskins will actually be a successful pro football player or not.
Right.
This is my point.
Yeah.
But he went to Ohio State.
Right.
And I don't know, did he win the Heisman or he was in the run for the Heisman?
No.
Kyler Murray won the Heisman.
Kyler Murray won the
So
Heisman.
they didn't draft Kyler Murray.
Right.
They didn't draft a name.
Mm-hmm.
They drafted a guy who they thought had the potential to be a really good football player. And the fans booed. So the Giants went 0-2.
Mm-hmm.
They put the kid in. And all the New York media was like, the kid's not ready. You can't blame Eli for this. He won the first game. Mm-hmm. Well, that's great, but now it's really going to get hard. They won the second game.
Won the second game.
See what I mean? It's like this thing where,
yeah.
You know, if you have a school for football based on the criteria that people set, Dwayne Haskins is an A, and Daniel Jones gets a C or a D.
Right.
So now we out on the field and playing, and it's like, oh, shit. Dwayne Haskins just played against Daniel Jones, and the Redskins got killed.
Right.
You know, Skins got wiped out. And Daniel Jones is, you know, who knows? Like, is he going to win the Super Bowl? I'm pretty sure they're not. But the point I'm trying to make is that you have to have a system. Like, you know, you have parents who are paying money.
Right.
Because if you're at a real music school, the only grade that any kid can really get is incomplete. Because you are incomplete.
Yeah.
You are incomplete for most of your life. And if you don't think you are, then you're already finished. And your learning curve is done and everything is downhill from there. So you can't give that as a grade because parents won't pay money. They want to see A's, B's, C's, or D's. So you have to develop a system that is codifiable.
Right.
So learning a Louis Armstrong solo, there might be a kid who you say learn a Louis Armstrong solo in the first year because he's never really used his ears or her ears in their lifetime.
Right.
They don't get it the first year.
Right.
They don't get it the second year. And in the third year, it just blossoms like a flower and all these things start happening.
Right.
So you can't, I guess you could technically go F, F, A+, 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 but it's kind of illogical.
Right. That's an interesting way of putting it.
But that's how, like, you look at the
New York
NFL.
fans on some other shit, though.
You know,
There was a lot of stuff that went into that.
Into what?
Into why they were so disgruntled. I think the Giants.
Who was disgruntled?
The Giants fans.
No, not really. It's just they don't know anything. And they think they do.
Those are passionate fans. Okay.
No, listen to me. I'm talking about all of us.
From a football standpoint.
Don't know anything.
I got you. I hear what you're saying.
We don't know anything. What do we know? I mean, I had a show that I wanted to develop.
Okay.
And I know it would have been good because it's like you take all these guys who call into the radio shows, all these guys who know all this stuff because they read a NFL thing, and like it's like a reality show. And you bring them into training camp.
Right.
And it ain't about them getting hit by people who are clearly stronger or faster than them.
Right.
My argument is that they're also smarter than you. But one of the things, like I said earlier, 20 minutes ago, how we try to, we use these false equivalences to make ourselves feel good about ourselves. So all blondes are stupid. All jocks are dumb. That's because if I'm not smarter than them, then I'm not better at them at anything.
Right.
I'm not faster than them. I'm not stronger than them. You know, I'm not in better shape than them. So at least, well, they're really stupid. You know? So my thing is that you take these people on these talk shows and you bring them in and you give them a playbook.
Right.
And you give them 2 weeks and you make them watch film every day. And then you throw their asses out on the field. Not with pads on, just with flags.
Right.
Put up the film and say, okay, like there was a thing. This is a perfect example. You can find it on YouTube. There's a writer asking Deshaun Watson, the quarterback for the Houston Texans, a question about why he wasn't throwing the ball deep during the game. And Deshaun stops for a minute. He says, did you play football? He says, no, I'm not trying to be. He says, I'm not trying to be, you know, like, it wasn't derisive about it. It's like, do you play football? Because the things, okay, I'm explaining to you. All right? You got cover 2, you got cover 4, He says, what happens in cover 4? Do you know cover 4? What happens in cover 4? And he wasn't saying it like in a mean way. He was just like,
a
what happens?
way. He's just asking him.
He says, we had a couple of shots early in the game, and they decided they didn't want us to do that anymore. So you do cover 4. Right. You take the safeties, you drop them back 30 yards, which basically leaves the middle of the field open, and it nullifies the D ball.
Right.
So I had to throw based on what that was. Everything that we did during the course of the game was based on what was presented to me, seeing the defense.
Yeah.
But and this guy's a sports writer. Now,
Right.
he gets to be in the locker room and hang around these guys and still doesn't know anything.
Right.
So the rest of us, we turn on TV and and we listen to like former players draw up diagrams. We still don't know what the hell is going on. That's what I mean. So when they're booing because their expectation was a brand name that they can identify with. We live in a brand name society. People that drive fancy cars don't call them fancy cars anymore. They call them by the name of the car.
Right.
I never heard a guy in 1970 call their car a Beamer or a Lexus or a Benz. It was just a car. So I got in my car. You talk to your friends now, they say, so I got my Lexus? It's a brand name. I got a Rolex. Everything is a brand name. You a Saints fan? Yeah, I got a brand name. I got a Fleur de Lyon.
Right.
Yeah, I identify with the Saints.
Right.
And it's like a thing, it's like bumper stickers. All of these things in context. What the hell is a bumper sticker? I just saw a bumper sticker that, like on a car. It's a car pasted, with bumper stickers, and it was like, gun control now, and Elizabeth Warren for president. And I kind of chuckled, and my tour manager, Rod, said, what? I said, man, this bumper stickers are funny. He says, why? I said, because who are they for? Like, do they have, like, memory problems, so they need to be reminded of who they're going to vote for?
Right.
So they say, who am I going to vote? Oh, right, Elizabeth Warren. No. So is it for the family members? I'm pretty sure the family members don't speak to them, so they communicate through bumper stickers. It's like this really strange thing where you are telling people like me who don't know this person from Adam what your persuasion is or what your beliefs are or who your favorite team is.
Right.
And the thing is that, like, everybody that knows me, you know me. You know I'm a Saints fan. I'm from New Orleans. Terrence Blanchard, Saints fan. Winton, Harry Connick, Saints fans. We don't need to put, like, bumper stickers on our cars saying New Orleans, because we already know we're Saints fans. So when you think about these things, who are these things actually for? I don't really have an answer to that. But the thing that's really funny about it is that, it seems to me that as Americans, we spend an inordinate amount of time, and this is where social media has really helped people to do this, but it's before social media. We spend an inordinate amount of time trying to craft an image or a narrative that is counter to who we really are, and we present that to people.
Definitely.
Now, the thing I loved about being from the South, back when I was growing up, it was not like that.
What was it like?
Like the thing you're talking about with us, man, y'all came and said all this controversial.
Right.
I didn't think of it as controversial.
Right.
Because I grew up in a place where people spoke their minds.
But that's the thing about...
That might be controversial up east, but my mother would tell anybody off in a heartbeat.
Right.
And it wasn't because she was trying to be controversial. It was just that we were not raised in a way that we had these two personas and we would present one. Like, yeah, there's polite and impolite.
Yeah.
But there's not this whole thing where
this
now I had to adapt a persona,
right,
and say things that mean absolutely nothing so as to not offend anyone. So what do you think about such as, everybody has something important to say? No, they don't. Everybody does not have anything important to say. That's like saying all books are good, all football players are equal.
Right.
No, that's not true. Some are going to the Hall of Fame, some almost went, some ain't going at all.
Right.
But we don't mind that.
Right.
We don't mind that in football. We don't mind it in sports.
Right.
But somehow, anybody that likes music wants to believe that the music they like is the best music in the world. And if you say anything counter to that narrative, then they try to come at you, which I always find amusing because, it's like there's nothing funnier to me than a person using social media to attack me with nothing to support their argument. Because I was talking to the guy, because, I said, I was asked a question about Kamasi Washington and Robert Glasper, and I said, that they have very limited jazz vocabularies.
Right.
And it was very interesting. Kamasi didn't say a word. He just didn't even he didn't even address it.
I don't think he would want that smoke.
No, it ain't no smoke.
I got a funny story.
There ain't no smoke.
No, but I got a funny story about your brother.
Robert's people started sending me all these messages.
Right.
And somebody asked me about it. The guy in Philly said, "Man, what do you think about all this?" I said, "Well, man, I was on the debate team in high school. And you have a point, and then there's a narrative, and then there's a counter narrative. Right. So moderator asks you a question, you state your narrative, the opposing point of view creates a counter narrative. And last I checked, fuck you, you're an idiot is not an adequate counter narrative. You don't know what you're talking about. How would you know? You're old." It's like amazing. So I'm seeing so my teenage kid is showing me all this stuff, and I'm laughing. She goes, "This isn't funny, it's horrible." I said, "You have no idea. These people don't know anything."
Right.
Well, you need to respond to them. I said, "I don't respond to stupid people." I was asked a question.
Right.
I said, because this guy I said, "Look, man, I was asked a question and I gave an answer."
Right.
So you say, "Well, man, what do you have against those guys?" Man, I didn't initiate that.
Right.
If the guy hadn't asked the question, it would never have come up.
It's not even about high road. It's just like,
It ain't even part of my...
Right.
I got records. I put them on. I listen.
Right.
I hear things. I make a decision based on what I hear.
I think that speaks to how different things are. I mean, I remember...
It's not different. It's been this way, Dana. It's always been this way.
But it was a little different with the cats... talking about that lineage, that group of cats that came in town, I'm telling you, in New York in 1993. I know, but
that's five dudes, man. I'm talking about it.
Man,
there were thousands of musicians in New York.
There was like 30 of us. Here's the thing.
30 out of 1,000. Okay, great.
No, but here's the thing.
All right, whatever.
But here's the thing. One of the things that separate us was just that. I remember coming off the Bandstand in Smalls, and this is how I made a little name for myself in the city. Not full of myself, but I think I'm more on point than not.
It feels good.
And Tommy Turntine, as I was coming by, looked at me and said, he just shook his head like, mm-mm. I was like, oh shit, man! The whole train ride uptown, the whole next day, I just couldn't. I'm like, man. And instead of thinking he did something wrong, I'm like, you know what? I must be sad. Let me go shed harder. And I never forget the first time I came off stage, because Tommy mentored all of us. I came off stage, and he looked at me. He was like, mm-hmm. It was like, oh, shit, yes. Yeah. I did something. I'm on the right path. Never was like you killing, right. But the same thing with you.
Yeah.
To get that nod from someone who I knew had forgotten way more than I know, I welcomed that.
Well, I always felt like nobody was going to tell me what was wrong with my playing after a certain point where I didn't already know.
Right. I got you.
So, I got I got some great ones. So, Dizzy tells me this thing about the blues. I'm working on it. But it takes time.
Right.
It's not like I'm gonna do this for 2 weeks and it's gonna be great.
Right.
This is a 2-year, 3-year project.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can't share it. You just got to listen to the music and wait for it to catch up. So we playing at the Vanguard. Tane. I've heard him. That high pitched laugh he has.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of them. This one was the best one. So Lou Donaldson's at the gig, and we come off the stage and say, "Hey, Lou," he says, "Hey, baby, what's going on? So let me ask you something. You been checking out the blues?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "It don't sound like it." And Tane goes,
everybody has a Lou Donaldson voice.
It's great. It is so great.
It don't sound like
it. Don't sound like it. So that's like a. Well,
and what do you say to that?
You just laugh. It's just like, because it's probably right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was clear I had to work on it.
Right.
And one day it was going to get there.
Right.
And then it got there. And I said, 2 years later or something, he's at the Vanguard and said, "Hey, Lou, how's that? Bluesy enough for you?" "Don't make me go get my horn in the trunk. I'll fuck you up."
Speaking of the older cats.
I said, "Go get it, Lou." He goes, No, you don't want me to do that. I said, "Yeah, I want you to do it." No, you don't want me to do that. I said, "I want you to do it." "Nah, that's all right.
I got to get your take on something that is folklore to
What?
a bunch of me and my cat. So it had to have been 97, 98. Me, Revis, JD, James Hurt, Pevin Everett. We're all playing with the Tess Marsalis Big Band.
Yeah, the Swing Daddies.
And you came in, directed by Frank Foster.
Yes.
And there was an epic battle that night.
There was?
But see, this is the difference, how we view it and how you probably viewed it, or probably how he viewed it. Y'all was going at it.
Who?
You and Frank.
We were?
That's interesting. That's interesting. Because to us, it was like,
What were we going at it about?
you were playing. Shit, you were soloing. So you came in and you played your shit. You came in, kind of easy. Then Frank, he played, now we also just checking that. Oh shit, Frank and B going at it. Oh, we all, young. You came in somewhere, then Frank get a little more. You're like, all right, motherfucker, shit. We're like, oh shit. And at that moment, to us, it seemed like something clicked in Frank, and he said, "Oh, so you just gonna try to play me with your little altered little shit you're playing? Okay, I see a little harmony shit. Okay, you know what? I wrote most of that shit. Check this shit out."
Yeah, I don't remember any of that.
Man, that night was epic.
Because and you can ask like the guys my age.
Right.
I have never tried to cut anybody on a bandstand ever.
Come on, I don't believe that, man. Come on, man.
I don't because
man.
And it's a really simple thing. It's a really simple thing.
You've never tried to cut anybody on the bandstand?
No, because it's counterproductive to music. If you got a quintet,
I think it's just human.
No, because when you on a team
mm-hmm.
and you start trying to outdo the people on your own team, your team's gonna lose.
I don't mean in that sense. Hold up though. It was all positive. There was it wasn't like there was some malintent with the playing.
No, but you don't understand like my philosophy, like playing with Sting and playing with all these other people.
Right.
And people always say, well, man, you play these situations and it works. I said, yeah, I just try to stay out of the way. I never try to insert myself in the middle of anything. I'm always trying to play behind it.
If you're like your brother, though, you are extremely competitive.
I'm not,
because he's competitive.
I am competitive, but I like winning. I don't like winning, because it's like, okay, I win this and we lose.
I remember.
I like winning. I like everybody in the group. I mean, I'm not just making that up. You can just ask Revis and them, ask him. I don't do that. Like a guy comes up to play. Guy comes up to play. Hey, man, can I play? I say, yeah. I say, what do you want to play? Mm-hmm. I don't say, we going to play this.
Yeah.
So what do you want to play? And they say that.
Right.
And I say, okay, what key do you want to play it in?
Right.
Let's play it in that key. Unless it's so ridiculous. Like somebody come up and say, Cherokee and B. I say, well, I don't know that. So I'll let you play it.
Right.
You can play it, but I'm not going to be up there. It's like, why don't we do like Jazz at the Philharmonic? Just play songs with a good melody and everybody knows it, and then we can have fun.
Uh-huh.
Because I don't believe in this, like going and shitting and finding some jacked up key that don't nobody know, and then calling tunes and embarrassing people.
Right.
I
don't think there's anything wrong with having a competitive spirit. Like
that's
Skane.
That's
like,
defeat though.
I would go down and play ball with Skane at least 3 times a week, and he hated to lose.
I understand that.
And
on 1-on-1, that's fine. But on 5-on-5, if he's out there trying to outdo you at the expense of the team,
no, it was never like that.
It's 1-on-1. That's 1-on-1. That's fine. But when you're on a bandstand, it ain't 1-on-1. There's 5 or 6 or 7 people there, and the job is to make music. And there's a lot of guys that don't agree with that, and they want to be on stage trying to cut. You wasting your time with me?
No, yeah,
you wasting. I've never been that guy. So
definitely.
Anything I was doing with Frank, it was because Frank was like my dad. It was jovial. We never had a thing.
I'm just telling you how it was like a tall tale to us.
That's great, but it ain't true.
It was like Babe the Blue Ox to us.
Yeah, but it ain't true. That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I ain't gonna stop y'all from saying it, but
I think a lot of us gonna talk about that night.
That's fine. I can't control that. I can't control that.
I remember going down there one day. I had the flu, and I thought Skane's like, "Man, we supposed to play, man." I was like, "Man, I just don't feel good." He says, "Oh man, come on, man, we need one more." All right, man. So I go down there. we play and we dust up whatever team we used to play against down there. That's what was that spot he lived over in the West Side? It had a basketball court right by it.
The Blue Note?
What was that? Oh, I forgot that high rise. Anyways.
Oh, I don't know. That's uptown.
Right. But I remember we played 1-on-1 afterwards, and I won one, then he won one. We played tiebreaker, and he got me. But if I was not sick, I would have got him. I was like, man, you're lucky I'm sick. I never forget. He said, "Shit, I didn't make your ass come down here." And it wasn't. It was like the competitive thing. Like, man, this is a game. We playing.
That's fine. That's fine on one.
Right.
But I mean, you can go read up on stories of when Jason Kidd and Jim Jackson were on the same team, and they got into some kind of ridiculous third grade feud over a girl or something. And this was a team that could have went to the playoffs, and they started having the two guards trying to outplay each other on the court.
Right.
The whole thing fell apart. You just can't. You can't have that.
Right.
You know, because the thing is that it's like when I talk to musicians, when I talk to students, I'm gonna talk to some students tomorrow, and it's the same thing. And if you want to confuse them, just ask them questions that should be obvious, like, "What's your role? What's your function in the band?"
Right.
What? What's your function?
Right.
It's like the whole thing. It's like, what is the function of the bass in a group?
Right.
You know, who's the timekeeper in the band? I would
Right.
say the drummer. No, the bass player.
Right.
So, if you are the timekeeper in the band, then your focus has to be on the quarter note. Yet when you play, your focus is on the 16th note.
Right.
That is why it is not grooving.
Right.
How can you be in a band with a drummer and you guys don't make any eye contact ever?
Right. Exactly.
There's all these little things,
Yeah.
that stuff that you learn from playing sports. When you talk, you hear like these guys, the NBA guys, you hear the coaches yelling at them. They have those videos of the practice. And the one thing you hear them constantly saying is communicate,
Right.
talk to one another,
Right.
let people know what's going on,
Right.
know when it's a switch, know when it's a that. And then you look at guys on the stage, they don't talk to each other at all.
Right.
They don't even make eye contact.
Right.
Because it's about them, their moment, and their solo. And when their solo is finished, they're done till the next solo.
Right. Yeah.
So in that environment, there's all this one-on-one stuff going on. But we have a group.
Right. Do you think New York is still the destination?
I mean, in terms of business, yeah. I mean, it's a place that has all the clubs. I mean, you know.
I'm just talking about as young musicians wanting to max out.
It's a place where all the clubs are. And the European promoters will fly to New York to hang out and check out music. They're not going to fly to Durham, North Carolina, or Omaha, Nebraska, to find nobody. So
not as many young people are making that a destination as they should.
That's fine. Well, first of all, you have this thing where I mean, you make more money playing a gig in a cafe in Durham than you do in New York, and the prices are like 3, 4, 5 times.
I like
greater.
Durham. How long you lived in Durham now?
17 years. But you know, you can play a gig in Durham and make, you know, $90 a person.
Right.
And you got guys doing $40 gigs in New York. It's untenable. It's not
Right.
It's not livable. And you know, Sonny Rollins ain't playing no more. And, you know, Blakey is dead, and
Right.
you know,
It's not the same
it's
allure as it was.
with, you know, when you get to hear these guys playing, you know, Keith Jarrett would occasionally play at the Vanguard or something like that. Herbie did a gig with Ron and Tony at the Vanguard.
Right.
It's worth spending all that extra money
Right.
in, you know, property tax and,
Right.
you know, ridiculous this, that, and the other. But now, I mean, there's nobody that I want to like spend that kind of money on to go here in New York. I mean,
Where do you see the music? Where do you see the music in
the
40
music,
years, man?
the music will only be as good as the people who are playing it. And, you know, to me, the category.
What's your outlook?
I don't have an outlook because I can't read the future. Because, I mean, if you had asked people about what was happening with jazz, you know, in 1977, before Winton got there and started that whole thing, nobody would have said there's going to be a kid from New Orleans with an afro and not enough ass to stink that's going to come up and, you know, that nobody could have predicted any of that stuff. You can't predict. You just, you know, the whole point is that there are people who have aspirational relationships with music, and then there are people who have transactional relationships with music.
Right.
The majority of the modern musicians have transactional relationships, meaning that they are not interested in learning anything that they cannot see themselves monetizing.
Right. Right.
So you go to New Orleans, you go anywhere, and all the tenor players are playing like the way New York tenor players sound now, because they're trying to think about, I'm going to move to New York and get a gig.
Right.
So if you say, hey, man, let's play some songs from the 30s, they're like, nah, man, that stuff's kind of old. Which is like, you know, a foreign language translation would be, well, I suck at that. So I am not going to do that on a bandstand where people can talk about me. So when we were coming up, we said, man, let's play this, man. We suck at it. Let's do it anyway.
Right.
Like the first time we played the Love Supreme, we were in the dressing room at the Vanguard in the kitchen in the back. And we were just talking about it.
Right.
And Bob Hurst says, man, we should just play that shit. I said, yeah. Yeah, we should. I said, it's not like we don't know it.
Right.
And we went out there and we played it.
How it sound?
Now you think about it sound like crap, but you know, the funny thing was like we played it. It was okay, it was good, but then then Joey joined the band, and we started playing it, and he goes, not for nothing, but the first chord y'all playing is wrong. I said, no, it's not. He goes, oh, it is. It's this. And as soon as he played it, I went, oh man. But it's like we would play it once a year, and the first chord we played was a completely wrong chord. Completely wrong. Completely wrong. But it's like, that's what I mean. It's like, when you talk about other musicians, and they're like, oh, well, you know, we can't play that because musicians will be there, and it might not be good, and then they'll say bad things, and I can't win the readers' poll. And so it's like the whole thing becomes a transactional understanding. It's not like, let's just go and play it.
Right.
Let's just go make some music. Let's, you know, this will be great.
Right.
You know, and then they like this. So when we finally did a good version of it, and all the insecurities come out, so then you hear people saying, that piece should not be played. And I was doing one of these talks. I said, yeah, that's Chinese for I can't play this very well.
Right.
You know? And then people laughed because it was funny. And then the guy says, that
was in the States or was it in Europe?
It was in Europe. That's sacrosanct. It was at a jazz festival.
Okay.
It's sacrosanct. You know, it's a tribute to God, and tributes to God should not be played. I said, you mean like, you know, Mozart's Mass and Bach's Mass and the Hallelujah, which is played every year by Handel. So those pieces can be played, but this one piece cannot be played.
Right.
You don't see how illogical this is?
Right.
Well, I just don't think it should be played. I said, if you could play it, you'd probably want to play it.
It's amazing you don't hear. It's almost an unsaid thing, like Love Supreme, and there's not many.
It's not amazing.
Albums that do that.
It's not amazing. No, they can't play it.
Yeah, but how they makes people feel. Not many people.
They can't play it.
Yeah.
And the reason they can't play it is because most of the guys that I hear now, not all, but most of the guys I hear now, their understanding of music is solely based on harmonic analysis.
Right.
And they become harmony, like, you know, everything is like scale to chord structure, pattern to chord structure. Everything is the structure to structure. Love Supreme doesn't really have a structure.
Right.
The first movement is one chord. The second movement's a blues. The third movement's a blues. The last movement's one chord.
Right.
So none of the vehicles, none of the 2-5-1 vehicles or this flat 5 substitute, none of that works.
Right.
So now you just got to play sound. And everybody should play it, because if they played it long enough, it will force them to accept that all the stuff they spent all that time learning does not work. So now I got to find something else. And that's what happens to me every time I try some new music.
Right.
It's like, all right, now I got to figure out how to play this.
Have you heard any young cats that are out now that you dig?
No, I haven't, but that doesn't mean they're not there. It's not like I'm in New York, but mostly what I hear now is so many really great saxophone players who are really average musicians.
Right.
They can get up and down on the horn, up and down on the piano. Not just saxophone players. Everybody can play their instruments so well.
Proficiently.
You know, just incredible.
Yeah.
But then they can't play the sound, and they can't play in the space.
Right.
So they eliminate the space, and all the songs are like, odd meter, ostinato, bass line, and your solo. All the solos are vertical. So when you listen to swing music from the 20s even, 20s, 30s, and 40s, because it was, in the 20s it was dance music, in the 30s it was dance music, in the 40s it was the cousin of dance music. So the music had this forward motion and propulsion.
Right.
But when you hear guys playing now, the music just kind of stands still and the solos go vertically. Or was that horizontally? No, that's vertical. They go vertically. They don't go horizontally. They don't create motion on their own.
Right.
And I just heard a gig with this Tim Byrne group, Broken Shadows. That was great. I enjoyed hearing that.
Where'd you see that?
In Minneapolis.
Okay.
And this was 2 days ago.
Right.
And it was just great to hear it. It was great to hear it because
Byrne is dope.
they were making music and everybody was playing in the space. It was like, they were playing Ornette tunes and some of their own tunes. And it was just, they would leave room for things to just happen.
Right. You're doing as many classical gigs as you are jazz now, right?
No. I'd really be a good classical player if that were the case. But no, I get about 10.
That's a fair. How do you?
But I get a lot more than 10 gigs.
How do you go into a headspace to shed classical?
Well, I do it all the time. Like tomorrow, if I had a project, I just finished playing a concerto last weekend and a recital on Tuesday.
Okay.
So if a gig is at 8, I go to the venue at 4, and I practice from 4 to 6, and then I eat at 6.
Right.
Till 6:30. Iron the suit, and
that
then get ready for the gig.
That seems like pressure.
No, the performance
more so than
the performance
like
is
swinging.
pressure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like.
Well, it's not about, because even classical music swings too. It has its own beat,
right.
And when it's good, when people respond to it, there's a propulsion that it has.
Right.
But I just think that there are no escape valves,
right.
And that's what I love about it. You can't change the key. When it's in the altissimo region, you have to hit the note. You can't pinch the note and growl through it.
Right.
You can't just change it to fit your personality or to fit the way you hear music.
Right.
You have to force yourself to hear it in the manner in which it is written.
Did you grow up playing classical?
I grew up at the beginning playing. I played clarinet, but I heard Wynton playing that stuff for 3 hours a day from the time he was 12. So what I needed to do was clear.
Right.
It took me a long time, probably about 15 years, to get competent. But that's because I was doing it in my spare time.
Right.
If I was doing it all the time, I would have been broke for a long time. But I could have halved that process to about 7 years. Could have halved it to about 7 years.
Right.
And I've enjoyed that whole process from when I started and how sad it was. Like, I'm just glad that I'm not afraid to sound like shit in front of a bunch of people. Because if I was, then I would do what a lot of other guys do. Just become good at like one or two things or one or two ways and just do those things all the time.
Right.
And never allow yourself to get outside of that box for fear of failure. I don't have a fear of failure. My whole career is based on failure.
You can't be afraid to sound sad at something, because ultimately everybody sounded sad at one point.
Yeah, but when you get to be a certain name and check out what Coltrane did. Coltrane invented this whole system that all these schools teach, the whole Coltrane giant steps and countdown and all that stuff. And in the middle of it, he realized that it was a very one-dimensional way, and he would be trapped in a box if he kept doing it. So he bailed on the whole thing.
Right.
Just bailed on it, And then he did this record called The Avant-Garde, which is not a good record, but it's one of my favorites. Joey hears it and gets depressed because just Train doesn't sound good on it. But I think it's great in context, because you have a guy who is as famous as a jazz guy is going to get, and right at the height of his fame, he goes in a completely different direction, in a direction that is counter to the way his brain works. Because Train's a linear thinker, and so he's trying to play this Ornette stuff. He hires Ornette's band, and they call the record was called The Avant-Garde, and they did all of the stuff, and that ain't Train's thing. But the fact that he was willing to put himself out there, well, most guys would be terrified to do that. They just would avoid it. It's like, Illinois Jacquette told me, my advice to you is find 2 or 3 things that you do that are yours and stick with it. That way everybody knows it's you. And I was like, shit, if I was going to do that, I just kept playing R&B. I mean, if I'm gonna play jazz, I'm gonna go out there and just, and it's not about trying to find the sound that hasn't been heard. It's just about, the hardest thing about playing jazz for me is to just walk on the stage with a blank slate and allow it to happen.
Right.
To not over prepare.
Right.
It's like you go to these recording sessions and a guy wants to play some hip thing, so he has to tell the piano player to change the chord so he can do his thing. I just want to let Joy play what he plays, and whatever he plays, I react to that.
Right, right.
It's like that's what improvisation is to me. The other thing, I just call it improv.
Right.
Because it's so calculated and figured out that there's no spontaneity to it. And audiences can pick up on the fact that it's brilliant in execution, but there's no spark of currency to it.
Has there been a band that's been a band as long as you cats now? What are you guys going on? Like,
I don't know. A lot of guys don't want band.
30-something years?
No. Justin joined the band in 2009.
Yeah, but I mean...
But the band changes every time there's a new person. It's not the same band. You can put the records on and it'll bear it out. We don't sound the same.
I'm not saying it sounds...
Yeah, but it's just the band changes. But like, Revis and I have been together since 96. Joey's been there since 99. And it's just, we love playing together.
Right.
And we get gigs and we do good and we always striving. We're always listening to music and sharing and trying to, it's not like we're trying to be different.
Right.
I just believe that the more stuff that you learn, it'll be different.
Right.
So, there's one philosophy, like, Wayne says jazz means I dare you and you got to look to the future. I mean, Wayne had such a thorough knowledge of the past that, why should he listen to music from the 20s? I mean, he knew all of this crap.
Right.
But I've discovered that the more early music that I listen to, it doesn't make the so-called modern stuff sound not modern.
Right.
It's just more sounds to add to your arsenal.
Right.
So that's my whole idea, is that the more things you learn, the more sounds you have in your head, that gives you the possibility for things to be new. So I was just talking to the guys, I really want to do a 20s record.
A 20s record?
But instead of...
Like on some like vaudeville type?
No, just the tunes.
Like the...
Just the tunes.
Early Louis Armstrong type?
Man, there's so much of that stuff that it's so beyond that. There's so many big bands, so many tunes, so many sounds. Just pick great tunes and play them in that fashion. And rather than rearrange them or put them in odd meter and all this stuff to make it new, the thing is that with the thing that we do in the band is that it's the philosophy is, all right, let's jump off this cliff. Because we know that before we hit the bottom, the mattress will appear. As opposed to, I'm happy to jump off the cliff as long as I know there's a mattress there.
Right. That's different.
It's a completely different way.
Yeah.
So
20s.
You play the 20s music, but you don't try to make it modern. It's modern on its own.
Right.
So
D'Angelo's last album, to me, had a 20s thing to it.
Not really.
It was underneath the surface.
Not 20s, no.
But it reminded me.
I mean, the swing beat
to that sort of.
But it's not. You don't listen to a lot of 20s music. I can send you some, and then
send me some.
I'll send you piles of it, and then after that, you'd be like, yeah, that's not really what I meant.
It took me back to that era. It's real subtle. It's underneath the surface.
No, what I'm saying is that you don't have enough data from that era yet.
Hit me to something.
Because, there's so much of it. I'm learning more and more of this stuff. It's like, that's all I've been listening to lately.
Right.
It's amazing how many sounds, how many vibes, big bands, small groups, big bands with violin, jug bands, bands with accordion. There's just so much. They tried so many things, and the songs were so different.
I would like you to send me some of that.
Some of the songs were so different. Right. Some of them had expanded form, great, brilliant key changes, the way they arrive at it.
What part of the country was a lot of that coming out of?
It's just everywhere. It was everywhere. I guess most of it was like they were recording in New York or Chicago, because that were the two big places. But I don't I'm not interested in the nerd parts of it.
Right.
Like, I don't care about the Kershaw numbers or when they recorded it or who was in the band. I just put it on and I'll steal the sounds.
When do you think you're going to start?
I don't know if we're going to do it or not, but the premise was, I was saying, is that instead of trying to make it hip, we would just take the songs and play them as they're written, and then the songs will change on their own while we play them.
Right.
The more we play them, the more we will make them ours.
Right.
Rather than trying to make them ours before we play them. You know, let's just do these arrangements. It's like when it's funny when Kurt Elling joined the band, we were doing a rehearsal for the record. And he said, "Yeah, let's play this tune." And he said, "So we're gonna talk it through? You know, we're gonna talk through the arrangement?" I said, "Yeah, we are. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, bang!" He goes, "No. I thought we were gonna talk it through." I said, "We are. 1, 2," and then we just did it.
Right.
And he was like, "Hey, man, you know, nobody does this." I said, "That's their problem."
Right.
You know, and he was like, "Well, you know, I mean, what's wrong with talking it through?" I said, "Man, I'm going to allow this song to be what it is. I'm not going to tell it what it is before I play it." So
I like that.
I am not interested in 8-bar intro.
Right.
First of all, what the hell do we need
But as a
intros
vocalist,
for
that shit
anyway?
was probably real uncomfortable because
No,
they
but-
like shit to be like.
No, but you know, he thinks more like a musician anyway, and he wants to be around the cats. And when you do these gigs, that's what these guys do. They talk through the song.
Right.
You know, a drum intro, and then this, and then this, and this, and you take 2 choruses, and I just say 1, 2, 3, 4, and we go.
Right.
And if it needs a bass solo, then you get one. If it don't, then you don't get one. If it don't need a drum solo, we just gonna play the song and let it happen.
Right. Sometimes shit don't work.
Yeah. So what?
Yeah, I feel you.
So what? You go to jail for that? No. You lose a finger? No.
I love it. No, I
Nothing
love
happens.
it. I love it.
That's what I'm saying. It was one day I realized, it was like, I'm out here worried because cats are listening to us and worried about stuff. And like, what's going to happen to me if I make a mistake? Absolutely nothing, other than a couple of dudes say, "Yeah, man, I heard you messed up that tune." I said, "Yeah, it'll be fine next week." You know?
The key is just not giving a shit about any of that.
It'll be, well, I mean, you got to have a goal.
Yeah.
And my goal has never been trying to get some dudes in a club to like me.
Right.
You know?
Right.
My goal is to get, you know, like Dizzy and Blakey and them cats to be like, "Yeah, man, all right. Yeah.
I feel you.
Okay."
Well, I will speak for a whole lot of us and just say thanks for your contribution because you pushed a whole generation into jazz, and I don't think that's talked about.
Well, I don't
nearly
see
enough,
that, but
man.
thank you. I don't. You know, I'm just trying to play.
Again, everybody, Dana Murray Podcast, my man, Branford Marsalis.
Let's go get a drink, man.
Brother.
Are they still down there? They might be gone by now, though.
Thank you, brother.
My man. All right, G.